Okay, thank you so much for the nice words. Very glad to be here. Very glad to walk you through the next 25 minutes. I pick a title called Diversity is Capital and how we can raise it. And I just want to make clear what I meant by capital. Capital is here meant the human capital we have within diversity, but it's also about the question how to turn human capital into financial capital. So most of the time, because we are here in the corporate sessions, most of the time when I go to companies, they always ask about what's the business case behind the diversity. So companies want to know, what does it bring me if I promote diversity, if I invest into it, what's going to be the return of invest. So I'm going to walk you through this. I will start with some facts and numbers describing a little bit the status quo we are in, and then going through the challenges I see. And of course, every challenge can be turned into opportunities, so we can see those opportunities. First of all, I would like to start with a broader definition of diversity. I know we have here the conversation around the gender, well, just want to bring the message. I think everybody's aware of it, but all our experiences are reflected in various diversity dimensions. And here we see this white boxes, and there are some more boxes, but for space reason, I limit it to this. Are all traits we are kind of born with. So we have traits like gender, age, social origin, income, disabilities, religion, education, and some more. Then we have some more blue boxes coming in, like values, personality, skills, and ideology, the way how we see the world. And all those are traits we are gaining during life, and they are kind of invisible. So I would say that true diversity happens inside this blue circle, and I call it always the diversity of thought, because that makes us unique, that makes us so special, and that makes a difference in the way how we think. Now, all the boxes, of course, also the white boxes, matter a lot in this conversation about diversity. But just for reference, the white boxes are usually used where people have privileges, and they are also used when we talk about discrimination. Saying this, I want to bring in two more elements to make clear that the conversation around diversity is not always easy. And the first reason why it's not so easy, it's because diversity is competition, first of all, and this competition is no longer local, it's a global competition. Diversity is about the fear of losing privileges. So as I mentioned before, we have the white boxes. There are people enjoying some privileges, and those people, as long as organizations don't work with them, they are afraid of losing their current privileges. Another reason why diversity is not a very comfortable discussion most of the time is the fact that it's a conversation and it's experience outside of the comfort zone. So basically, I don't know if you are familiar with the so-called mini-me effect. So we always like to hang around with people which are like us. It's a small mini-me, it's a small me, which I always look into independently on which group I will be in. At the moment when I have a conversation with somebody which is totally different than I am, and has totally different experiences and has totally different diversity dimensions, as I mentioned at the first place, then the conversation can become tedious because it's very hard to find common points. It's very hard to accept that somebody has a different point of view. It's the diversity of thought. And that could bring me out of the comfort zone. Saying this, I'm coming to some numbers in the industry. And I have a comparison here, which is on the left side of the screen. There are women in IT. And it's a comparison over various countries, so it's an international comparison. And the green triangles are the percentage of women in IT, and the gray triangles are the percentage of male in IT. And we see here Bulgaria number 1 with 30.3%. Then we have Australia with 28%, Romania with 26.3%, and Germany is number 20 with 16.6%. On the right side of the screen, you see the percentage of women in IT in the big tech companies, where most of people might believe that they have a big amount of women in IT, but the reality is that we have for Apple, Google around 20%, and Facebook and Amazon 19%. If we look at the fact that statistically speaking, we have worldwide a little bit more than 50% women and a little bit less than 50% male, we still have a long way to go. Another comparison here about leadership, because I have this conversation most of the time with women, and they tell me, yeah, when I started in the company, I didn't have any issues around gender. And yes, this is definitely true, that the serious issues around gender start at higher ranks, where people want to get into leadership position. Then the competition is there, as I mentioned at the first place, and then it gets a little bit more difficult. Here, another international comparison from Albright. Well, here you see the numbers of women in the boards of the 30 biggest companies in the national index of their country. And we have USA with 27.8% women in leadership position. For Europe, Sweden is most of the time leading the row here with 22.7. And coming to Germany, I'm located in Germany, we have 14.7% women in leadership positions. It's not a big number. As I said before, there is some more way to be done. Now, coming to the first poll question, I've been told to have some questions for you. I'm not quite sure if I can see those questions and if you can share the poll. Oh, I'm afraid I'm going to continue. Let me go back to my overview. Coming to the question of the title, Diversity is Capital, and here it comes the business case, because as I mentioned in the first place, companies want to know what's the business case behind it. And there is definitely one. There are lots of publications, there are lots of studies around it. And the first advantage of promoting diversity in companies and in any organization worldwide is the fact that the productivity will increase and there are higher profits. The second reason is we see a higher competence in the global management. So people which promote diversity, they will have access to new markets and they will be able to handle those markets globally way better. And last but not least, we have an increased innovation power. It's been proven that teams which are diverse in multiple dimensions, they are very innovative. I also have to say at this point that the innovation, the power of innovation increases over time. So when diverse teams come together at the first place, there are lots of conflicts. So they are not that productive as homogeneous teams. You need people to manage it well. You need people to address the issues which are in place. But at the moment when this leadership happens, then you will see an increase of innovation and an increase of all these advantages for diverse teams. Summarizing it all together, every company worldwide, if big, small, mid-size, and any organization worldwide will definitely have, beside the equality topic, which is for sure essential, will have also advantage, a strategic competitive advantage by promoting diversity. So coming to the challenges, I mean, we have seen the numbers. We have seen on the other side that, yes, there is capital. There is a great potential through diversity. Why we are not moving that fast as we would like to move? There are improvements, definitely, but not in a fast pace as we would like to have. And the question is why? And here I would summarize the major diversity challenges I'm seeing here is around environment and system. I put these two together and I'll explain soon what I meant by this. And these are the so-called external barriers I see. And on the other side, we have the neuroscience, which I call here internal barriers, which are coming from us. Well, as I mentioned at the introduction, I'm a physicist, so I like to use physics to explain things in an easy way. So here we have a system, and the system is a glass of water with some ice cubes inside. Around the system, there is an environment, and on the left-hand side of the picture is sun. So if we put this glass of water, the system, with the ice cubes under hot temperature, then the ice will melt, either it will melt partly or completely, depends on how long I'm doing this. So the environment will drive changes in the system. On the other side, if I bring this glass of ice cubes in a cold environment, then well, either the ice cubes will stay as they are if the temperature is not that cold, or the water will completely freeze, and I will have a bigger ice cube than at the first place. So why take this here? Because I want you to differentiate between environment in corporates and the system we are all in. And I brought here a statement from Sylvia Welby. She's a professor of sociology in UK, and she used to study all kind of things around domestic violence, patriarchy, gender relations in the workplace, and the globalization, and how these elements combine to each other. And she has a very simple definition of the social system we are all in, and that's called patriarchy. I think this is nothing new for anyone. But the definition is so simple that I thought it's worth to bring it here. Patriarchy is a system of social structure and practices in which men dominate, oppress, and exploit women. When I read the sentence first time, I said to myself, wow, is that hard? And I have to say that it doesn't mean that all men do this, and it doesn't mean that it's valid for everyone. So we have to differentiate. It's a sentence which describes the system, and back to the system, not to the environment. And I think key elements here are domination, oppression, and exploitation. And it's not only valid for women; it's valid for each underrepresented group. So coming back, oh yeah, and the summary is that it's all about power. But now this is the system we are in, and my theory is always that the system won't change that fast. But coming back to the environment, there are environments where things are changing, and by environment I mean organizations, institutions, some parts of corporates where yes, people and leaders want to improve diversity, and they want to create an inclusive environment where people feel belonging. And I think the first step of my speech today is if you are interested into going into the industry, make sure before you enter that you get into the right environment, and the environment is not equal to the system. There is a difference, and there is a focus on inclusivity and belonging. Now coming to the second challenge, which is the so-called inner barrier I was talking about before, the neuroscience. It's very interesting because when you start Googling and looking for information around gender neuroscience, you will find out that there is a lot of activity ongoing. There are obviously more than 5,600 publications since 1990, so it seems to be a very, very active field and very interesting for many people. And basically, I mean, I didn't read all these publications, I read few of them, but basically there are two groups of scientists. In one group, there are those which are saying that the difference between male and women, male and female, is related to genes, and that's it. And the other side of the scientist is saying the difference between male and female is a matter of experience, is a matter of environment. And yes, there are differences there, but it's more the experience rather than the genes. Now, I brought here two examples of two female scientists. One is Professor Madura. She had a very exciting paper in 2014. I think these pictures, which she drew, many of you most likely have seen already. And she basically shared a so-called typical female brain and a typical male brain. And on the left-hand side of the picture with the red lines, this is kind of a female brain where the connections are between the two half parts of the brain are extremely strong. So there is a strong connectivity between left and right-hand side of the brain. And in the right-hand side of the picture, which is more a typical male brain, the connections are more inside of a half of a brain rather than between the brains. And yeah, this is interesting, definitely, but she's saying even the picture indicates a big difference. The truth is that the differences in the structural connectome are smaller than the picture indicates. Another female scientist, which I like very much, she wrote also very good books, Gina Rippon. She's professor in psychology. She introduced the term of neurotrash, saying that the differences between male and female are not related to the genes. It's the behavioral sex differences are not biological. They are reflected based on the different social experiences we are having in education and occupation. And yeah, she's saying that our different experiences in life drive the changes in the brain. Now, we're not going to know how the science will end up and how the final conclusion will be. But I think at the end of the day, I just want to bring the awareness that actually doesn't really matter, at least for myself. I think the key message here is that all our brains are multimorphic. Basically, we all have the so-called male and female characteristics at a given degree. The question is only how much are we aware of this and how much we understand how people perceive us. So just to give an example, you could have a very strong male language, but you are a woman. And when you speak to people, you will be perceived different than the expectation of that person is, because that person will expect you to have a very female language. So there are many elements here. I think the key message I want to bring in here that there is a mixture and we have to be aware of how we get perceived by people. Now, there are some more limitations in our brain, and I will summarize that. So basically, we have all our beliefs, our doctrines. All these beliefs were put in our brain at a very young age. Some of them we are aware, some of them we are not aware. Then we all have our values, and the conversation around values is very, very difficult because what is, just to give an example, definition of punctuality in Germany, or punctuality in, I don't know, in the United States or in India or somewhere else worldwide. Then we have the so-called conformity standards. It's a very hard thing because every time I'm working with teams, I have leaders which are telling me, why should I change this? I'm doing this since 20 years. And then you are sitting there and wonder, what's next now? So this is a very harsh one. Then we have the gender roles, and these gender roles are cultural and depend a lot on the cultural background. We all have our experiences along life, as I just said before. And last but not least, there are around 188 brain biases, maybe meanwhile even more studied and described into the last detail, where we have this cognitive, cultural, and so on biases. And one more element, which is most of time forgotten, but it's from my perspective very important, is the verbal and the non-verbal communication. And this is a good example of how perception works. Just to give an example, female tend to have communication over language, and male tend to have communication over body language. And this is a different way of doing things, especially under conflictual situations. And if we understand these differences, we understand better each other. So summarizing all this together, yes, there is a culturescape. It's the cultural landscape of your environment. And we all have to be aware, male or female, that we have a brain, and if we have a brain, we are biased. Now looking at the time, I think I have another 5 minutes. Coming to some more tips from my side, I think it's key for you to understand the environment where you are in. Is it an environment which is equal to the system, or is it an environment which is promoting diversity, inclusivity, and belonging? Then I have to understand, how do I get perceived in order to make sure that there's no big gap between who I believe I am and who people believe I am. If the gap is big, I have to do something about it. If the gap is small, then I'm okay. And last but not least, in all this processes is the question about how do you feel about it. If you feel uncomfortable in an organization, then something is wrong, and yeah, some more analysis is needed. Coming back to the original question of diversity is capital, as I said, there is a business case, but now coming back to each of you or to each of us, what can we do in order to raise our capital? And my key message is that in order to reach our true potential, we have to identify and overcome our inner and the outer limitation, obstacles, barriers, however we call it. We have to be aware of them. It sometimes sounds like a tedious job, but it's not that tedious. I think we have to bring this awareness that this needs to be done. It's not an automatic process you enter and things will flow. Sometimes there is more assessment around it needed in order to have a smooth process. Yeah, I think this would have been my poll too, but I'm not sure if this works. I would summarize here that, well, the system changes may take longer than the actions needed to empower yourself. And if you pay attention to some elements, lots of elements I mentioned today, and you will bring the awareness to yourself, then you can empower yourself and things will run smoother rather than waiting for the system to change. Thank you so much.